After doing this for Europe, America, and Asia, the continent with the most countries, Africa. A quick introduction in case you didn't see the previous ones. The point of this video is to understand how each country got its name, what it means, how it sometimes is different in the native language, and other temporary names it might have had throughout history. 54 countries means a long video, so as usual, there are specific timestamps in the description for you to check specific countries if you don't want to sit through the entire video. Africa is divided into 5 main regions: North, West, Central, East, and Southern Africa, according to, well, where each part is located on a map. We're gonna go in this order, starting with Morocco. The full Arabic name of Morocco is Al-Mamlaka Al-Maghribia, and I'm sorry, but I'm gonna mispronounce a lot of things in this video. This can be translated as Kingdom of the West, or for linguistic reasons, also Kingdom of the Evening, since the sun sets in the west, I guess. However, the word Morocco is derived from the name of the city of Marrakesh, which was its capital under the Almoravid dynasty and other periods of its history. The origin of the name Marrakesh is disputed, but it most likely comes from the merging of 2 Berber words, Amud and Akush, which means Land of God. Right below Morocco is the disputed territory of Western Sahara. Western is the geographic locator. It's on the western part of the Sahara Desert. Sahara itself derives from the Arabic noun Sahara, meaning, well, desert. So for all this time, we've been calling this place desert. Moving over to Algeria. Similarly to Morocco, their country name derives from the capital, Algiers. In turn, Algiers' name comes from the native name Al-Jazair, which means the islands, in reference to the 4 former islands which lay off the city's coast before becoming a part of the mainland in 1525. I'm not sure how these islands joined the mainland, perhaps some natural phenomenon or some type of land reclamation techniques similar to what the Dutch did. Then Tunisia, which again derives from the capital city of Tunis. The first Western name for it seems to be the French Tunisie, which comes from the native Berber language. They use these symbols, which transcribed is Tnes, meaning to lay down or encampment, although some say it comes from the name of an ancient Punic goddess, Tanith. A fun fact, before Tunisia, the territory's name was Ifriqiya, or Africa, which, according to what I read at least, gave the name to the entire continent of Africa. Further east is Libya. Apparently the origin of the name dates back to an inscription of ancient Egyptian pharaoh Ramses II, written as RBW in hieroglyphic, which had the purpose of naming a confederation of tribes in the Libya region known as the Great Chiefs of the Libu. These Libu were the people of the regions of Cyrenaica and Marmarica, where Libya is today. So Libya seems to come from that, an evolution of Libu. Then we have Egypt. Egypt keeps the trend of countries named after cities and is derived from the Greek word Aegyptus, which was the Greek pronunciation of the ancient Egyptian name, which I can't pronounce, meaning mansion of the spirit of Ptah, originally the name of the city of Memphis. However, the ancient Egyptian name of the country was this one in hieroglyphics. This would mean something along the lines of black land, probably referring to the fertile black soil around the Nile River, pronounced as Kemet or Kumat in ancient Egyptian. And below it is northern Sudan, whose name derives from the Arabic words Bilad as-Sudan, apparently meaning land of those who are dark. The name would therefore be in reference to the dark skin of the inhabitants, a name given by medieval Arab geographers who explored the region. And what is the name of the sponsor of today's video? Blinkist. If you watch the channel a lot, then you probably already know about Blinkist, but in case you don't, Blinkist is an app that condenses and summarizes non-fiction books into really quick, around 15-minute reading or listening sessions. I've mentioned this before, but I'm actually someone who uses this app a lot. I think reading is one of the best ways we can learn about anything, but most people don't have that much free time to spare or are able to focus on a single thing for a long period of time. And Blinkist allows you to learn without having to spend a lot of time doing so. They have a ton of different categories, from history to science, creativity, health, philosophy, among so many others. Right now, I'm listening to one series called Lessons from History that we can apply to our current times. The first 100 people to go to Blinkist.com/general knowledge will get unlimited access to Blinkist for 1 week to try it out. And if you like it, you'll also have 25% off when you get the full membership. Click the link in the description if you want to try it. Now let's get back to the video. Moving to West Africa now, we have Benin. During the colonial period and at independence, the country was known as the Home, but in 1975 it was renamed Benin in order of the ancient kingdom of Benin, even though it apparently doesn't have anything to do with it on an historical level. The ancient kingdom was the land of the Bini people, whose name is perhaps related to the Arabic word Bani, which means sons. The Home's etymology is somewhat unknown, but legend says it comes from the native Fon da Ome, meaning belly of Da or snake's belly. I'm not sure why. Then Burkina Faso. This one also had a different name, Upper Volta, a German and then French colony, I think, which was named after the local Volta River. The river Volta itself was named by the Portuguese, meaning twist or turn, likely because of the path that it follows. In 1984, it changed its name to Burkina Faso. The words Burkina and Faso come from different languages spoken in the country. Burkina means upright and Faso means fatherland. In terms of meaning, I guess you could call it land of the honest. Going offshore is Cabo Verde. Cabo Verde or Cape Verde means green cape and was named by Portuguese explorers when they arrived in the area. Although the explorers were actually naming a peninsula on what is now the coast of Senegal, but then the archipelago took the same name. The meaning is somewhat self-explanatory. It was a cape and likely green because of vegetation. In 2013, the country officially informed the UN that its name should always be Cabo Verde in Portuguese and not Cape Verde or other translations. Côte d'Ivoire did the same, asking that people use the French version instead of translations like the common English one, Ivory Coast. So moving precisely to Côte d'Ivoire. Originally, the Portuguese and French merchant explorers in the 15th and 16th centuries divided the west coast of Africa into 4 coasts, according to the main resources available from each of them, like the Pepper Coast or the Gold Coast, among others. The coast that the French named the Côte d'Ivoire and the Portuguese Costa do Marfim both literally meant coast of ivory, reflecting the export of ivory that came out of the territory. I think the only country in Africa whose name officially has a "the" in it, the Gambia. The name Gambia is derived from the Mandinka native term Kambra or Kamba, meaning Gambia River. Upon independence in 1965, the country used the name The Gambia. The full name is Republic of the Gambia, so it might mean Republic of the River Gambia, thus justifying the usage of the "the." So essentially it comes from the name of the river, although I couldn't find the origin of that anywhere. Legend says that when the Portuguese arrived in 1456, they asked a local fisherman who owned the land, and he would have replied Cambi Bolong, referring to a man with the Cambi surname, apparently common among the natives. The Portuguese registered the name of the region as this Cambi Bolong, which was eventually transformed into Gambia, then Ghana. Like Côte d'Ivoire, Ghana was also a coast to European colonizers, the Gold Coast. Before this, the region was already known for its large gold usage and was named the Land of Gold by Arab traders, even before Europeans arrived by sea. However, it eventually changed to Ghana. Like Benin, it was chosen in reference to the ancient Ghana Empire, also in West Africa, but which apparently has little or no connection with the modern country. The etymology of the name Ghana means strong warrior king and was apparently the title awarded to the kings of that medieval Ghana Empire. Guinea is next. Guinea is a traditional name for the region of Africa that lies along the Gulf of Guinea. The English term comes directly from the Portuguese word Guiné, which emerged in the mid-15th century to refer to the lands inhabited by the people that they called Guineus, a generic term for the African people south of the Senegal River. But I couldn't find out where Guineus comes from or what it's supposed to mean. And with a variation of the same name, Guinea-Bissau. It shares a name with the one we just saw. However, there's a key difference. Even though they were in the same region, Guinea was colonized by the French, while Guinea-Bissau was colonized by the Portuguese. So upon independence, the Bissau, which is the name of the capital city, was added to the country's name to prevent confusion between the two. Bissau itself comes from the name Bosasum, which means brave as a jaguar, apparently referring to the way the warriors of the area looked, sometimes dressing as jaguars. But the origin of the name was that of a pre-colonial local ruler. Over time, Bosasum started to be written as Bisão or Bissau, and finally Bissau. Liberia was called Pepper Coast by the Portuguese during colonial times, between 1461 and the 17th century, but eventually when the country was formed, the name chosen was Liberia. This is because Liberia began as a settlement of the American Colonization Society, who believed that at the time, African American people would face better chances for freedom in Africa rather than in the US. In fact, the capital city is called Monrovia after US President Monroe. Moving on to Mali, which is also named after an ancient empire. The name literally means the place where the king lives and seems to come from the capital city of the Mali Empire, which was also Mali, being the seat of power of the king/emperor. To the northwest is Mauritania, which keeps the trend and is also named after an ancient kingdom. It later became the Roman Empire province of Mauritania, and Mauritania itself derives from the way the Greeks and Romans called the Berber people the Mauri, which is also the origin of the word Moors. Then Niger. The country's name comes from the local river which passes through the country. The origin of the river's name is uncertain, but a common theory is that it comes from the Tuareg term Ngiran, meaning flowing water. And below it, Nigeria, which apparently has the exact same origin, although I'm unsure why they added the ia at the end, perhaps simply to differentiate the name from that of their northern neighbor. Next to it is Senegal. Senegal probably comes from a Portuguese translation of the name of the Zenaga, a local people. Another option is that the name comes from the combination of Rog Sen, a god in the Serer religion, and Ogal, meaning body of water in the Serer language. A third theory states the name could derive from another native language's phrase, Sunu Gal, which means our boat. Then Sierra Leone, originally named Serra Leoa by the Portuguese explorer Pedro de Sintra in 1462. The modern name is the Italian translation, which was introduced by Venetian explorer Alvise Cadamosto in his maps, then copied by other European mapmakers, and therefore being adopted as the name for the region and then the country. The original name comes from the Lion Mountains near the current capital city of Freetown. Why these were named Lion Mountains is something I couldn't find the answer to, perhaps because lions were commonly found there. And then Togo. Togo seems to be the coming together of two native Ewe words, To, which means water, and Go, which means shore. So essentially just describing the geographical characteristic of the region because it's on the coast. And now we move to Central Africa, beginning with Angola. The name Angola comes from the Portuguese colonial name, Kingdom of Angola, which was in turn derived from the title Ngola, held by the kings of Ndongo. Ndongo was a possession of the Kingdom of Congo, but was seeking greater independence in the 16th century as its own kingdom. So essentially it was a native name for that specific area. Then Cameroon, which was also named by the Portuguese, pioneers when it comes to the European exploration of Africa. Originally Cameroon was the name given by the Portuguese to the Wari River, which they called Rio dos Camarões, River of Shrimps, due to the abundant shrimp. Eventually it was adapted into German and French, and today the country's name in Portuguese remains Camarões, which means shrimp. The unoriginally but I guess very objectively named Central African Republic doesn't have much to it. They chose it because of the country's location within Central Africa. During colonial times, the region's name was Ubangi Shari, which is derived from the Ubangi and the Chari rivers. I couldn't find where the river names come from. Chad is also named after Lake Chad, located inside the country. The lake itself takes its name from the native Kanuri word for, well, lake. It's the Sahara Desert all over again. That one was desert, and this one is lake, apparently. The Republic of the Congo is next, being named after the Congo River, whose name is derived from Congo with a K. A Bantu, so a native, kingdom, which was located in the region when the Portuguese first arrived in 1483. During the period when it was colonized by France, it was known as the French Congo or Middle Congo. Today, to distinguish it from the neighboring Democratic Republic of the Congo, it is sometimes referred to as Congo Brazzaville. Brazzaville derives from the colony's founder, Pierre Savorgnan de Brazza, where the Brazza comes from his title over the Italian town of Brazzaco, from the Latin bratios, meaning arm, and a similarly named Democratic Republic of the Congo, who shares the same ancient Congo with a K kingdom origin. The word Congo itself comes from the Congo language, and it originally might have meant a public gathering, based on the root word Conga, which meant to gather. Here we also have another Guinea, Equatorial Guinea. Guinea has the same origin as Guinea and Guinea-Bissau, being named after the way the Portuguese referred to the local people, the Guineos, while Equatorial refers to its location along the equator line. It used to be called Spanish Guinea during colonial times. Moving to Gabon. Gabon's name originates from Gabão, Portuguese for cloak at the time, which is roughly the shape of the estuary of the Como River by Libreville. It's crazy how many of these countries' names have Portuguese origins, which I guess guess makes sense since the exploration of the African coast was done initially almost exclusively by the Portuguese, and even if then other European powers colonized the areas themselves, they mostly kept and just adapted the names the Portuguese explorers had given those regions, which a lot of times then transformed into the independent country names today. And off the coast, again, to São Tomé e Príncipe. This one was itself a Portuguese colony, two islands, one named after a saint and the other after the Portuguese prince. The Europeans arrived in São Tomé on the 21st of December, St. Thomas Day, and so gave that name to the island. Príncipe was initially named Santo Antão, Saint Anthony, because apparently it was also discovered on the day of that saint, changing its name in 1502 to Ilha do Príncipe, Prince's Island, in reference to the Prince of Portugal, who directly received payments from the island's sugar crop. Starting off, East Africa's region is Burundi. Modern Burundi is named after the Kingdom of Burundi from the 16th century, which itself might derive its name from the Ha people of the region, whose place of origin was known as Bua, although what the meaning of Bua is also something I couldn't find. Immediately going into the ocean again, Comoros. The name Comoros derives from the Arabic word Kamar, which means moon. According to legend, in 1632, upon hearing of Islam, islanders are said to have dispatched an emissary to Mecca, who then returned and led the gradual conversion of the islands to Islam, justifying its usage of the Arabic word due to this Arabic influence. In 933, the Comoros was also referred to as the Perfume Islands, for its scent of yellow ylang ylang, a key ingredient of perfumes used at the time by traders of Oman. Further north, but still in the east, is Djibouti. The etymology of the name is disputed. Some say it comes from the native Afar word Gabuti, meaning plate. Others, the word Gabud, meaning plateau. In local languages, it is known as Yibuti in Afar and Djibouti in Somali. I believe with the same meaning, whichever that might be. And next to it, Eritrea. The name Eritrea comes from the ancient Greek name for the Red Sea, Erythra Thalassa, based on the adjective erythros, meaning red. It was first formally adopted in 1890 with the formation of Italian Eritrea, a colonial possession. The name persisted over the course of British and Ethiopian occupation and was reaffirmed upon independence. One of the most recent countries in the world, South Sudan. Sudan has the same origin we saw with North Sudan, and the South just refers to the fact that, well, it's the southern version of Sudan. And then one of the oldest countries in the world, Ethiopia. The name also comes from Greek, a Greek adaptation of the ancient Egyptian term Atiu Abu, which means robbers of hearts. Ethiopia then began being used to refer to the ancient region of Nubia, then eventually changing into Ethiopia. In English and generally outside of Ethiopia, the country was historically known as Abyssinia. This was derived from the Latinized form of the ancient term Abash. Although there's also a theory based on a 15th century book that states the region was named after a legendary biblical figure called Ethiopes. Kenya is named after Mount Kenya of the region, first registered by a German explorer who, upon coming across the mountain, asked a local chief its name. The chief would have told them it was Kenya, which literally translates to the mountain which has the Nyaga, meaning ostriches, likely due to the pattern of black rock and white snow. The native Ajikuyu call it Kirima Kirinyaga, while the native Embu called it Kirenia. All three names have the same meaning. Back south and near the Comoros is Madagascar. In the native Malagasy language, the island is called Madagasikara. Madagascar was an European adaptation. However, the origin of both of these is crazy. Apparently, it was because of 13th century Venetian explorer Marco Polo, who when passing by the island, confused it with the port of Mogadishu, a Somali port further north. It was also temporarily named São Lourenço by the Portuguese when they arrived there in 1500. Also starting with an M, Malawi. The name Malawi comes from the Maravi, an old name from the native Amaravi or Chewa people who inhabit the area. Maravi is thought to mean flames and could come from the fact that a lot of people in the ancient Maravi kingdom were iron workers. Then Mauritius, the island was first named Dina Arobi by African sailors, but I couldn't find out the meaning of it. However, the islands were uninhabited, and when the Portuguese arrived in 1507, they named it Cirne, probably after the name of one of their ships. Later on, another Portuguese expedition renamed the archipelago to Mascarenhas, after the name of the commanding explorer Pedro Mascarenhas. However, the current name came from the Dutch, Dutch. In 1598, Dutch ships landed there and named the island Mauritius in honor of Prince Maurice van Nassau, stadtholder of the Dutch Republic at the time. And keeping the M trend, Mozambique. The country was named Mozambique by the Portuguese after the island of Mozambique, derived from Musa bin Bik or Mosa al-Bik, an Arab trader who first visited the island and then lived there. Moving to Rwanda, Rwandans are mostly part of just one cultural and linguistic group, the Banyarwanda, from where I imagine the country's name comes from. This cultural group is formed by Hutu, Tutsi, and Batwa people, but I couldn't find out what its name means, so if you know, please leave a comment telling me. The Seychelles names is very straightforward. They were named after Jean Moreau de Seychelles, the Minister of Finance of French King Louis XV. Somalia is apparently named after Samal, the oldest common ancestor of several Somali clans. One other theory is that the name is derived from the words so and mal, which together mean go and milk. Some others propose that the term Somali is derived from the Arabic for wealthy, which is Zawamal, and Somaliland, a self-declared country, shares the same name origin, adding the land, so land of the Somalis. Tanzania is a country that joined Tanganyika and Zanzibar, and the name Tanzania joins precisely those two old country names. Tanganyika itself is derived from the Swahili words tanga, which means sail, and nika, which means uninhabited plains, while Zanzibar comes from Zenji, the name for local people, and the Arabic word bar, which means coast. Moving on to Uganda, which is named after the subnational Buganda kingdom. Apparently, the kingdom itself is named after the term Luganda Buganda, meaning land of the Ganda, which I assume are a group of local people. Although honestly, this one didn't have a lot of available information, so it might not be fully accurate. Starting with a Z, Zambia. The territory of what is now Zambia was previously known as Northern Rhodesia. It was renamed Zambia when it got its independence. Zambia was derived from the Zambezi River, with Zambezi meaning Grand River in the local native language. Rhodesia itself was a name given by the British during colonial times, apparently after Cecil, a local colonial company's founder. And also with a Z, Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe derives from the native Zimba Zamabwe, translated from a Karanga dialect as houses of stones, likely referring to the houses of the native people. Zimbabwe was also previously known as Southern Rhodesia. Finally, we arrive at Southern Africa, starting precisely with South Africa, which is pretty straightforward too, just because it is located in the south of Africa. Within it is Eswatini, previously known as Swaziland. Eswatini derives its name from a 19th century king named Mswati II, but it essentially means land of the Swati in the local language, as did Swaziland before it. And also Lesotho, which roughly translates to land of the Sotho, which I imagine are the local native people. It was previously known as Basutoland, with the same meaning, land of the Basuto, then known as Basotho. Above it, Namibia. The name of the country is derived from the Namib Desert, which is apparently the oldest desert in the world. I didn't know that. The name Namib itself is of Nama origin, a native language. It means vast place. A first proposal for the country name was even Republic of Namib. Before its independence in 1990, the area was known as German Southwest Africa and then Southwest Africa, reflecting the colonial occupation by the Germans and the South Africans. And finally, Botswana, whose name means land of the Tswana, referring to the dominant ethnic group in the country, precisely the Tswana. So, that is a brief overview of the name origins and meanings of all African countries, how they got their current name, what it means, how there were sometimes significant differences in the English/international name of the country, and the way in which the local and or native people refer to it in their own languages. And also how some of these countries, regions, or locations had different names, sometimes having to do with predecessor states or simply with different ways in which they existed, understanding the weight that sometimes European and especially Portuguese colonialism had or still has in the way these nations are named, and how it has taken some time for Africans to choose their own country names. Did I make any mistakes in any of these country names, or did I forget any countries? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching this video. Subscribe if you want, and I will see you next time for more general knowledge.